carry my groceries from the car into my girlfriend Candace's house in one load. September may be the time that the rest of the country is cooling off, but for us in Phoenix, the heat is still oppressive. And what's distracting me from my serious grocery carrying mission is Candace's annoying neighbor, Peter. "Hey there," he says as he starts marching over to the driveway to talk to us. We didn't ask him to come over, but this is what Peter always did. It was like he sat in his window, waiting, watching for our car to pull in the driveway so he could come chat. Candace was always very nice with him, but I was suspicious of Peter's motives. He was a single, middle-aged man who I thought just wanted to be real chummy with his 20-something female neighbors. I saw right through this misogynistic attempt to surround himself with pretty young girls, and I wasn't having it. I was tight-lipped, I was brow furrowed, and I gave him all the nonverbal cues I had that I did not want to talk with him. And around this time, I was a new postdoc, so I was trying to walk that line between kind of still being a college student, but also wanting to be a real adult. We had moved out of the college student neighborhoods, which was nice to leave the keg parties behind, into adult neighborhoods. They brought a whole new challenge: creepy middle-aged neighbors. And Peter was just the worst. He knew so much about our lives. He always knew when we had had a party. He always knew who had visited us recently. He even knew that Candace's roommate had broken up with the guy she'd been seeing recently. How did he know all this stuff? We joked that he had wiretapped the house. It was a joke, but it kind of contributed to my uneasy feelings. So you can imagine my shock when Candace told me she had invited Peter to Thanksgiving dinner. What? Thanksgiving was such a special day for us. It was when all of our former graduate student friends got together because we were still all too poor to travel home to our actual families. We rarely invited outsiders, let alone creepy neighbors. Fine, I said, but I'm keeping my eye on him. So Thanksgiving Day rolls around and he shows up, pie in hand, annoyingly large grin on face, came in just as he did many times to us in the driveway and asserted himself into conversation after conversation. I mean, I guess in this case, what else was he supposed to do? He didn't really know anyone else. But as I watched him, honestly, there wasn't much to see. He was really nice. He was really polite. He was very respectful. But I did notice something interesting. No matter what the conversation was, he always brought it back to the sporting events he attended. Story after story after story of the Phoenix Suns, our football team, the Arizona Cardinals. We even have an ice hockey team in the desert, the Arizona Coyotes. He told stories about all of them. And our friends would humor his stories for a bit and then slowly drift into other conversations. But eventually it was time to eat. We all sat at an outstretched table, about 15 former graduate students, and the odd man out, Peter. We had a great meal. We ate, we drank, we laughed. Just like every Thanksgiving, it was a lovely time to reflect our good fortune. Not long after dinner, Peter thanked us profusely for having him. He said he typically has nowhere to go for Thanksgiving. Ugh. A sinking feeling set in. I think it was some pumpkin pie, rumbling with some guilt, and it all came together at once. The social awkwardness, the lack of meaningful relationships, the insistence of talking about sporting events. Oh my God, I think Peter may be on the spectrum, I said to Candace later that night. This irony was all too much because what I was doing in my new postdoc was a study with middle-aged autistic men. And I was loving my new work. I got to take each participant out to lunch in between the MRI scan and the cognitive assessment, and just a time to get to know them better. Because I was totally aware of the social communication differences, I was very patient, For example, I had recently gone out to lunch with Greg, and he talked for longer than I wanted him to talk. I wanted a turn to talk, but I was patient and understanding. Sometimes he was louder than I felt comfortable with in the restaurant we were sitting in, but it was okay. Even through those differences, we found this very genuine camaraderie about how it's hard to grow up in small town Southern America. And then lighter topics about, what do you say, soda or pop? It's a divisive question. So in this different scenario with Peter, I had completely missed the signs. I was embarrassed that I didn't see the connection to the men that I was getting to know through my research, and also just shameful that I could have treated someone so poorly merely because he didn't meet my expectations of that social situation. So ultimately, I had to practice giving myself grace. I was talking with Candace, trying to figure all this out, and realized I was scared. Something about Peter had scared me. I and many other young women I know have been treated poorly by middle-aged men, and being queer has absolutely intensified that mistreatment at times. So we talked about our shared strategy of putting on social armor. When you meet someone that you're not really sure what their intentions are, you put a block up, and you protect yourself. And I realized that Thanksgiving night how quick I was to do that when I met Peter, rather than actually paying attention to how he treated me. In reflecting on all of my lunches with the autistic men I was getting to know, I felt totally safe and comfortable. And I thought, I bet Peter's a great guy too. So from that day on, I met Peter with smiles and eye contact and lots of questions to get to know him better. What a great guy I've been missing out on. When he came over to our driveway then, we could chat and laugh, and I could hear about his really cool sporting events that he went to. He would help us carry the groceries in from the car. So eventually Candace moved out of that house and in with me to downtown Phoenix. But a couple years later, we visited our old college town, Tempe. We went to the local Oktoberfest, grabbed a beer and a bratwurst, but quickly diverted away from the crowds to a nice bench overlooking the lake. And what do you know, someone else found refuge in that bench. It was Peter. We were so happy to see each other. He was as kind as ever, and I was able to mirror that kindness back to him along with Candace. We caught up over our German delights and eventually said our goodbyes. I was sad as I walked away from Peter that day because I didn't know when I would see him again. Turns out Peter, Greg, and every autistic person I've ever met has taught me so much about how to let go of fear and embrace acceptance. Thank you.